Hello, my name is Aubrey Wilson, and I'm Director of Government Innovation at POPVOX Foundation. We're a nonprofit organization based in the United States with the focus of helping democratic institutions keep pace in our rapidly changing world. Today, I'm honored to be able to present to you on how artificial intelligence tools can be used by members of parliament to assist you in your daily work. Here's an overview of what I hope to talk to you about today. First, I want to go over the technology itself. Then we'll visit a list of best practices for how to use and not use these tools, and some of our most promising use cases that we've identified for how you, as the elected representative of your community, can use currently available tools right off the bat. I'll end with a brief list of tips for prompt generation and will provide my contact information for any follow-up that you may have. Throughout this presentation, my hope is that you might feel inspired by the possibilities that these tools offer to increase your capacity to serve your constituencies, not only in the sense of being able to potentially do more with what limited resources you may have, but also to help you manage your immense workflow in today's very demanding world, so that you can focus more of your time on meaningful tasks and less time on administrative ones. So let's dive into the tech overview. I wanted to start today with just a quick scene setting slide on the technology itself. The term AI seems to be everywhere these days, and in many ways has been taking the world by storm. However, I want to provide the reminder that artificial intelligence is not new. These types of technologies, which have been referred to as predictive modeling, machine learning, or natural language processing, have been around for decades, in fact. Every day, examples of artificial intelligence, including how your cell phone autocorrects spelling errors in text messages, or how online shopping carts will recommend other things that you could buy based off what you've already purchased, or even how Google Maps will reroute you to a different route if there's an accident ahead of you. Those are all examples of how AI is actually already part of our lives. Where we found ourselves today, however, and what this presentation is focused on, is a new type of AI technology, which is generative AI. This technology is different. It actually generates new content simply by making a user ask or having a user ask it questions and instructing it, often through an interface of a chatbot. These tools, also known as large language models or LLMs, present meaningful opportunities to assist you in your daily activities, both related to and beyond the parliamentary process itself. Use of commercially available models is a very good place to start when experimenting with this type of technology, and once the foundation is built, customized LLMs, such as the ones built for specific use cases, are possible. And here's a list of the very common commercially available LLMs as of June of 2025. So let's talk about approach and mindset. I'm unaware of how familiar you personally are with generative AI and the use of LLMs, but in speaking with new users of these tools, here's the approach and mindset that we humbly recommend. The first is to start simply using the technology. There's no better way of actually understanding how the technology functions and how best to start to use it than just playing around with it itself. These tools are incredibly intuitive and user-friendly, but until you sit down and dedicate time to explore and experiment with what they're capable of, it's challenging to truly understand how they'll be useful for you in an official capacity. However, our second big approach and mindset recommendation is to treat the LLMs as if they were an eager intern or an employee on their very first day supporting you in your role. The LLMs come off as very confident in their answers and their abilities, but the information that they provide is not necessarily accurate or in alignment with your stance, beliefs, or knowledge as the elected official. It is vital to double check the information provided, especially for public-facing work. So, with that foundation laid, let's jump into our best practices. The first one is we really highly recommend that when you're starting to experiment using LLMs, that you actually provided source documents. You don't have to rely on each model's pre-existing knowledge. To have direct help on something that's task related, for example, writing a policy memo on a given topic, you can actually feed it the relevant documents that you want it to reference when giving you your answer back. You can control the sources in that way of what it actually draws from. Therefore, you have more control over the accuracy of that information and the ability to know exactly where it's reviewing information in order to answer your prompt inquiry. Our next best practice is fact-checking assertions. As mentioned, with treating an LLM like an eager intern or an employee on their first day, you always need to verify any facts, citations, or references provided by an LLM. Even if they seem credible, they may not be accurate. For example, if you ask it a question regarding the legal code and ask it for citations, make sure to check the law citations and make sure that the citations are correct and relevant. LLMs have been known to hallucinate, and even if the citation formatting looks correct and it seems correct, it's always worth truly double checking to ensure that it actually is exactly what it says that it is. The third best practice is to be transparent about usage. LLM and generative AI tools broadly hold the potential to aid in parliamentary operations and everyday tasks, but their use does not inherently foster public trust. As you deliberate upon your use and your legislature's use of these tools, we recommend considering disclosing when LLMs are used for drafting or in assistance in creating materials that are public facing to maintain and build public trust with using these tools. Our next best practice is to set the tone and the length specifications of how an LLM responds to you. Generative AI performs best when it is given very detailed instructions about what you need. So it's best to be explicit about the tone, such as if you want the tone of the response to be formal, persuasive, conversational, etc., and the length of the response. For example, you can ask it to specify to write a 200-word summary of a policy proposal in a neutral tone. If you leave out these details, you allow the LLM to default to the tone and the length that it determines that is best, which oftentimes is something that you could control in order to actually get a better response out of the bot. We recommend that you, particularly when using in a parliamentary setting, that you provide LLMs parliamentary context. If the task involves parliamentary language or processes, provide that background for the LLM to better serve you. For example, include references to specific parliamentary terms, attach the rules of your legislature if you're asking it procedural questions. It's also helpful to inform the LLM of the context in which you're using it, just for a perspective. So for example, putting in something like, I am an MP serving in the House of Representatives of X country and would like a summary reviewing the top 5 policy issues that were debated over the last calendar year. That prompt is going to be much more informative to get an answer back for you than simply asking it, what were the top 5 policy issues over the last year? If you use that second prompt, the LLM doesn't actually know the full context of what you're asking it to limit its search to focus on. My last best practice I want to share with you today, and one that is actually my most highly recommended and something that I practice on a daily basis and try to remember to constantly go back to, is to iterate upon your inquiry. Ask follow-up questions of the LLM. Don't think that it has to be one-off conversations or one-off questions. Actually engage it and teach the LLM what you're looking for. When it gives you an output that doesn't mask or doesn't match what you asked for, ask that it tries again or ask a question a different way. By going back and forth with an LLM, you'll learn how to communicate best with these bots and prompt engineer to actually better utilize these tools over time. So now that we've gone over best practices, there also needs to be a very detailed discussion about what to avoid when using LLMs in order to minimize security risks or threats to personal privacy and information. So you want to avoid, when using LLMs, you want to avoid inputting sensitive or confidential information. You need to assume that any information or document shared with a commercially available LLM can be public at any time. That includes sharing any constituent or your own personal information. You should never input names, addresses, phone numbers, or private details into an LLM. Both of these first 2 bullets are best practices. And as a result, if you are using an LLM to give context or to give you support around a particular situation that does involve these personalized details, it's best to actually generalize the situation when engaging with the bot. That way you're able to get the assistance from the LLM, but you don't risk any private information being shared with a commercially available model. Another thing to avoid is over-reliance or unquestioned trust of these tools. The use of LLMs to assist or augment your work is the point of this training and the point of how these tools can really boost your effectiveness as a member of parliament or a member of your legislature. but they should not replace your critical thinking, your expertise, or your political judgment. As I highlighted earlier on, the best way to approach these is as an intern or that new employee mindset. And so LLMs can confidently produce inaccurate information and things that just simply don't align with what you might believe in. And so if you're using it for particularly any public-facing work, you always should make sure to actually read it and edit it to match what your beliefs are, and continue to follow your gut with any information that it provides and fact check those assertions. It's also best to avoid assuming the information that commercially available LLMs provide is up to date, although many of them are able to search the internet in real time. If you ask a model the information that it was trained on and how up to date that is, most models will give you a time that is in the past. Some of them have been trained a month ago, some of them have been trained 6 months ago. So if you were to ask a model what the weather was yesterday or what was considered in your parliament the day before or the week before, it may not actually know that, and it may hallucinate. And so it's very important to remember that although an LLM does seem to be pulling very relevant and time relevant information off of the internet, that it may not actually be producing things that truly are up to date. So now that we've gone over best practices and things to avoid, we want to get to the fun part of this presentation, which is actually giving you some use cases. I've designed these prompt examples and use cases into kind of 3 different buckets: research and analysis, constituent engagement, and administrative tasks. And so this is just a couple sample prompt ideas just to get your kind of brain going into the type of use cases that right off the bat, you can start experimenting with these in your official capacity or in your personal time as you get more familiar with these tools. So regarding how generative AI tools can assist you in research and analysis, they're very helpful in summarizing lengthy reports. As I used in a prior example, generative AI can be incredibly helpful in processing large amounts of information. And you can actually take a report that is saved as a PDF, attach it to your conversation with a commercially available LLM, and almost have a conversation with that report, asking it the key points to explain the arguments to you in a much more brief format, or even asking it to predict the impacts of the report's findings. LLMs can be very helpful in assisting with note-taking and meeting transcribing, or in taking transcribed meeting notes and pulling out the meeting summary, the action items, and what are the things that you need to take away from that meeting and act on follow-up with the meeting participants. It's very good at drafting policy memos. They're powerful research assistants and very great brainstorming aids. I know that's one of the #1 uses that I use LLMs for is for brainstorming aids. However, I will say that once again with this, the better prompt that you ask or put into an LLM regarding what you're looking for in a policy memo is the better product it will respond with to you. And so when asking it to draft memos for myself, I always provide it with a sample policy memo first so it understands the format that I'm looking for. Once again, I make sure to put in details about the tone that I expect, the length of the memo that I would like, and all of those details on the front end really ensure that the draft that comes out on the back end is something that does actually save me time, even if it is something that as a first draft, I will have to review and double check for myself. Here are a couple examples of use cases for constituent engagement using LLMs. Taking a different perspective, obviously, with regards to kind of more of a public-facing and stakeholder engagement side of using these tools. LLMs can be extremely helpful in content creation. They are very great on drafting very fast first drafts of press releases, speeches, event scripts. One of my favorite use cases is taking talking points and having it help me adjust them to different audience types. I know that we have a great use case example of an individual who knew that they had to give a speech to a bunch of school children, and so they were able to actually take talking points and have the LLM help come up with relatable stories and anecdotes to talk to kids about, to help them understand the value of government. And so asking it to help you just once again brainstorm creative ways to engage with constituents and different types of communities is something that LLMs can be very helpful with. They're also very helpful with creating newsletters or summaries of the activities that you've been taken. Oftentimes, those types of activities are the ones that kind of fall down your to-do list. But if you're able to have the assistance of LLMs to do that first draft quickly for you of creating that newsletter, of creating those outreach that outreach content to keep your constituents informed of your work, that's something where LLMs can save you a lot of time. And regarding also, once again, things that kind of fall down the to-do list, brainstorming creative engagement ideas is another task that LLMs can help out a lot with. If you know that coming up, it's summertime and you want to come up with new event activities or new ways to reach, for example, the youth in your community, or ways that you can do surveys to reach different parts of your population in the area that you represent. Those are all things that LLMs can help you brainstorm and might help you, once again, save time and be inspired in different ways. For our last bucket of use case examples is how LLMs can save time on administrative tasks. They're very helpful with meeting preparation, translation assistance, once again, transcription, agenda preparation, FAQ development. I know on the slide I have a couple actual prompt examples of that you can test out and try out on your own. But the ability, once again, to just summarize information, bring things together, and kind of be an executive assistant in a way is super helpful. With that being said, I would just to note a reminder that when asking it to do transcriptions or to prep for meetings, to once again just be very conscious of the information that you're inputting into the LLM regarding those personal names or personal identification information, and just make sure that everything that you put in is okay to be publicly accessible. Perfect. Okay, with those sample use cases laid out, once again, it just kind of scratches the surface of some of the ways that you can use these tools to save you time. But as you explore kind of use of these tools, and you heard me talk about prompts a lot, I wanted to leave you with the final slide of actually the biggest kind of prompting do's and don'ts. And I actually have this printed out behind my own computer when I use these tools as reminders. These are kind of the tips that I like to keep in mind when building prompts to get the most out of these tools. Building thoroughly thought out and detailed prompts is really a muscle that, once again, kind of going back to our mindset slide about how the best way to use these tools is just to start using them and experimenting, and the same goes for figuring out how to write a good prompt. And so once again, for prompts, it's really helpful to be as specific as you can be and provide context so it understands who you are and the kind of realm that you're asking it to focus on when answering your question. Ask it clear questions. If you're asking it to do a whole list of tasks, make that list actually a bulleted list so it knows the order to follow the task versus kind of just being, thrown a whole jumble of things to kind of sort through. As I mentioned with the policy memo, it's really helpful to provide it with clear examples of preferred formats for specific documents you would like it to draft for you. Always review and verify the information that an LLM gives back to you. I cannot emphasize that point enough. And then once again, make sure to iterate and refine on your prompts. After playing with it, you will start to understand and build out that muscle of how these LLMs kind of think and how to prompt them to give you the best responses back. On the critical warning side, once again, don't insert PII. Make sure to only attach information, reports, legislative drafts, meeting notes, everything else that can be publicly accessible. Don't assume that anything that it gives back to you is factually correct, including citations. Double check all citations. And once again, don't assume that the model's information is up to date. It's always actually really great to ask a model when was the last time that your update was, and that'll give you an idea of when it was trained last. Well, thank you so much for your time and watching this brief introductory course, and for just your curiosity and potentially how generative AI tools can support you in your official capacity. I hope that after today's couple minutes together that you feel inspired. On the slide is the POPVOX Foundation website where you can keep up to date with our latest resources on how we are trying to help democratic institutions keep pace with our rapidly changing world and all the amazing emerging technology that is out there. Additionally, on the slide at the bottom is my email address. If you have any questions about this training or use of generative AI in a parliamentary context, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you again. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.